Hello and welcome back to Sarah's Spare Corner. My name is Sarah. I am the host of Sarah's Spare Corner. Sarah's Spare Corner encompasses gaming as well as arts, crafts, and various different forms of creativity. Additionally, I like sharing theories, concepts, and ideas as I am a philosophy major. And when I'm not poor, I might travel places and I might post about it. We are revisiting our discussion on the Switch 2 after a 1 month of ownership. If you didn't know, I have posted a 1 day review, I've posted a 1 week review, and now we are doing a full 1 month review. And I think I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to do a 1 year review and 15-year review and 100 ridiculous. Let's move on. You can find the full videos up here. I'm going to pin them to this video if you're interested to see that. But we're going to talk about a 1 month, and I am not going to get into the logistics of it, the hardware. I've heard some people talk about the HDR and their problems with it. I'm going to be honest, I know nothing about that, and I would recommend you would go find another video if that's what you're looking for, because I'm not going to talk about it here. I am not a tech person, at least not when it comes to the Switch. I don't know that kind of information, but I will talk about things I do know. One of the things I do know is the price, because I'm Canadian and the price is a little bit more expensive for me than it might be for someone in the United States or anywhere else for that matter. I can also talk about the limitations of the console that I've experienced so far, and I will also briefly talk about the weirdness that it seems to be the difference between North American audiences and Japanese audiences, but that's as far as we're going to go probably on this 1 month discussion. Couple of maybe not negatives, but more like questionable things, I would say. So the first of which is I have thoroughly been enjoying playthrough of Skyward Sword that I've been doing. Find that playlist up here. That was the first playthrough that I've decided to do for this console. We're going through the entirety of the Zelda franchise timeline. I have enjoyed Skyward Sword a lot more than I did on the Switch. Even though the game was made for the Switch, the Joy-Cons on the Switch made the game almost unplayable. I kind of went a little bit more in depth in it in stream. Supposedly, the motion controls work better than when playing on the original Switch. I'm looking for your cursor to see if it drifts. It does drift sometimes, but partly it's just because I'm waving it in a direction that has nothing to do with the game. Because, I talk with my hands or something. But I have noticed a lot better of a time with this game, because I thoroughly hated this game the first time I played it because of the motion sensor, and especially with this game, and I haven't had as much of a problem this time. Maybe that's why this playthrough has gone by faster than when I did this on my own time, but I do notice a much easier time for sure, which is nice, because I hated this game so much when I first played it because the motion sensors were just so irritating. So I feel like I have noticed personally, when it comes to the Joy-Cons, the movement of the joystick is a lot more smooth and a little bit more manageable. In terms of the sensor bar, I'm pretty sure is located more on the top, or it's just a natural built-in with the controller. So I've Googled it, and it looks like the sensor bar is not on the outside, it is built on the inside. So my second guess was correct. The overall softness, or the controllers themselves, are easier to handle, and I feel like they're weighted more properly, so it is a little bit more manageable to actually play Skyward Sword, whereas the Switch almost made the game feel entirely unplayable and less enjoyable. I remember talking to a friend in real life about this game. I was like, yeah, I kind of hated this game, and she was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, really didn't like it. And she's like, oh. She's like, I really liked it. I'm like, I hated the desert. She's like, that was the funnest part. I'm like, I mean, to each their own, really. But for me, no. Although I will say this, I have enjoyed the desert way more this time around. And I think it's partly because the Switch 2 did improve on the Joy-Cons. This is almost a more an actual playable game now, with the Switch 2 controllers being different than the first one. Whereas when I played this originally on the Switch, I was like, this is the worst game ever made. whose house is this? Oh, it's yours. I would say that the controllers kind of also made a big difference to this playthrough, which is good. I totally forgot how much I actually really didn't like this game though. Like, again, it is just a game, so it's not that deep. I'll get over it. Like, but it is like not my cup of tea. And partly it's because every villager on the Sky Island, every single one of them, even the clown off in the distance, they all have a side quest that if you're following the side quest, it's a very long one. And how do the controllers make a difference? Is it the way the layout is? It's because these don't drift as much. So when you're sword fighting, and this is something I've brought up through this playthrough before, but when you're sword fighting, you're moving the sword, right? Like, hold on. Oh yeah, you can't open a sword in a house. That makes sense. But when you're sword fighting, okay, this controls where your sword is going. Based on if you're fighting Girahim, the Joker looking guy, okay? And you're not holding it flat because you're in a sword fight and you're kind of just flailing everywhere. It's too easy to not go in the direction of what Girahim is pointing at. And it gets really annoying when like you mean to swipe right, but because the drift is so bad, which is when I press Y and you hear that ticking button, that's me recalibrating the controller to a direction of where I want it to point. When you're in a fight with Girahim, he puts his hand based on where your sword is. But if you have, like, say your controller's just off for the second because you forget, because, you know, you're in the middle of a sword fight and you're flailing everywhere, the controller will drift. And then if you mean to hit him from left to right, you accidentally actually hit him from right to left based on where your controller is, which honestly could just be fixed by me actually being a pro gamer. But I'm not. I'm just a regular human being playing this game. And as a regular human playing this game, and there's probably kids playing this game and people who've never played games before playing this game, that can be really frustrating, especially in some of the bigger battles. And so that's basically on the difference between this playthrough and then when I did it on my own. To be fair, I was playing it the first time. This is the second time of me playing this, but hence the stick drift causing massive difficulty, 100%. And so it gets really annoying because it's like, that's not what I was trying to do, but then like the screen does it anyway. But then also like, maybe it's just, you know, I need to get good and like figure out what direction my hand is actually pointing. But like, there's a ton of people out there that like the way this game is structured would not be accessible for. So it kind of sucks on that level. I didn't realize the old Joy-Cons was so common. Thought that only PS5 controllers were bad for that. It really wasn't that bad. It's just because this game was originally made for the Wii. And so it has very restrictive qualities on the way that it's supposed to point. But this controller, and also the Switch 1 Joy-Cons, they're smaller than the Wii, which means they don't hold the same weight. And also their point of sensory is not on the top, it's on the bottom. So, well, I guess these ones are a little bit more based on the front, I think. But the other ones were based on the bottom. So sometimes even I'd be playing Breath of the Wild and I'd just be leaning back. And I would like have my controllers on my stomach like this. And then all of a sudden, the game was not playable anymore because I was just resting. And the sensors that were on the bottom were sitting on my stomach. So think about it this way. You're across the room and you press Y, but it's actually connecting to your Switch through the bottom of your controller. And based on where you're pointing, it kind of is just, it can get a little janky, and especially in sword fights. And because this game was made for the Wii, well, where was the Wii sensor bar? It was either at the bottom of your TV in front of it, or on the top of your TV in front of it. So there was a little bit more easy to smooth out those issues. Whereas, to be fair, in this sense, this particular playthrough, my Switch isn't directly in front of me, so it doesn't have to go far to sense. But if my Switch 2 was across a very long room, the drift I would hope is very good, and maybe I should do a test. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to right now because I'm using my Switch 2 for streams and my Switch 1 for like my actual regular playthrough. But it does get like tedious on this game, and like many other games that I think were just not meant for Switch 2. So I think in some cases the drift would be fine, because I've played with the Switch 1 so many times and it hasn't been a big issue. But for this game specifically, it was a huge issue just because of this not being made for the Switch. And yes, they did update it for the Switch. Obviously, this is a Switch 1 game. It's the HD release of Skyward Sword. But the translation between the Wii and the Switch 1 were just not fully there, which is why they give you the opportunity to fix for drift by pressing Y. But it's still like, eh. And so when it came to playing this game on the Switch 1, there were things that took way too long. Like the forest thing that we just did, which took an hour. I'm pretty sure I spent like 2 hours doing that when I played this the first time. Again, could be because maybe I just need to get good. But I'm thinking also of people who don't play games, people who are new to games. That was really tedious for me, and it was not enjoyable. And it also made me hate the entirety of Farron Woods, because everything in Farron Woods was based on what your sword was doing or what direction you were pointing your Joy-Cons. And this is also why sometimes I'll say things through this playthrough, oh my god, that's not what I did, is because I was moving my controller a certain way, but the controllers don't pick that up. And that's mostly because this game is not made for Switches. This game was made for the Wii. And it was translated over, but overall, whatever. And sure, I can put this into an actual controller. I did test it out. But then when I tried putting it in as a controller, like putting it into its little, thing, I ended up moving this. And then as I was doing this is what was moving the sword, which was so stupid and it didn't feel natural at all. So there is just like, it's just this game, honestly, on anything but the Wii, I can imagine would be awful. That being said though, I've never played it on the Wii, so I don't even know how legit it was. But that's why I wasn't excited to return to this game, was mostly because yes, the storyline is so good in this game, but the playthrough was almost so tedious that it was like, I don't ever want to do this again. Like, and also all these side quests, silly. Like, who cares? Although I'm gonna help her because she gives me money if I help her, so there's that. I just want to show something really quick, because even though I did show that segment of me talking on stream about how the sensor and the Joy-Con movements were a lot more manageable this time around, literally a minute after I talked about that, ended up having Joy-Con drift issues, which was able to be fixed by going to the home screen. And it did happen another time on stream as well, but this one I'm just going to show because it was the first time it happened. This has only happened twice to me. Okay, hold on. The controllers are drifting again. There we go. Oh my god, what is going on? Hold on, maybe I need to pull it back. Why is it pointing at the ground? I'm not pointing at the ground. I just talked about glitch, like this drifting. What are you doing? Like, it's drifting so hard. I'm not even moving it and it's just spinning. What the heck is going on? Like, are you kidding me? I was just talking about drifting and here it is drifting. Oh my god, stop it. Stop. Stop. Oh my god. I need the controller to figure itself out for a second. What is going on? I'm taking a sip of Pepsi. That was ridiculous. Frickin' dumb. There we go. It seems as though because maybe the sensor is in the Joy-Con, inside the hardware itself, that maybe if you swing it around a little too much, the Joy-Cons get very confused about what they should be feeling. But as soon as I switched to home screen, that seemed to have fixed the issue, and I thought that was very weird. Can't say that Skyward Sword is my favorite game, but it definitely made it a little less miserable. But that's more of a game issue and not a console issue. I would say definitely the highlight of the Switch that I've seen so far is that 4K upscaling, as well as the Joy-Con movements. Those are exactly the reasons why I bought this Switch as well. Maybe not the controller upgrade, but I was buying it specifically for the 4K upscaling. So to me, I did get my money's worth because that's what I wanted. I wanted Zelda in 4K. There's certain things that seem to have come out. So I was, thankfully, I would say, even though I lived in Canada and it was a very expensive console, I was able to put half of the cost down first when I prepaid and half of the cost down when the console came out. That way, a lot of people who prepaid and whatever, they didn't have to be overwhelmed with the weight of the purchase. So that was the only reason why I was able to actually manage buying the Switch 2, because I probably would have waited several more years like I did for my OLED. I would say that I feel very comfortable with my purchase and I'm very happy with my purchase, and I feel like it's paid off for me. In terms of the controversy around the Switch, I guess I could talk lightly now about some of the negatives. I really don't understand why Mario Kart for the Switch 2 doesn't allow the players to free roam with people on the same console. I do find that strange, and it's probably one of the biggest downsides of the game for me. I didn't like it when I played it a month ago. I still don't like it now. I think it's kind of silly the way they've done that personally, but that's more, again, about the game and not necessarily the console. I don't really get the point of the chat feature, if I'm being honest. I don't know that many people in real life who are like, hey, let's play the Switch later together. Now, to be fair, I think it's because I'm mostly antisocial and I like to be left alone. So it's also like I tend to hang out with people who are like that too. And so both of us are like, no. But I can imagine maybe for more extroverted people, that's something that maybe would work for them. I just can't say that I'd find it use in my life at any point in my time. But I just think it's kind of weird that in order to use it, you have to pay for it. But I also understand that, but then also like Xbox Live when I was on 360, like you could still message people. You just couldn't play online with them. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a silly thing to like think that is ridiculous. Who knows? Maybe you can write in the comments down below and tell me if you think that's ridiculous or not. I guess my last concern is the price. And also the game key cards. I find the game key cards kind of like a bad business decision. I know that why they kind of offered it was they know that, so each cartridge would cost about $15, and then that would be the upcharge that would be returned to the consumer, which would make any low-key indie game a lot more expensive. And I guess the question kind of goes there, as to you, even a consumer, would you purchase an indie game that maybe was more worth $20 but now all of a sudden it's $50? Like, is that worth it to you? But I also understand that there is a key factor of inflation there, and also the Japanese yen is not that great right now. And I also understand that you do want to give the option to the player for things to be a little bit more easy or accessible, so therefore the downloadable content is a little bit simpler. I do find the game key card just a silly action. It's not something that like Nintendo did first. Like I think other consoles have done it first. I think it just feels more shocking that Nintendo's doing it, because Nintendo's kind of always been more of the family friendly console out of like the three big names. Not to say that there isn't, family console content on PlayStation or Xbox, but I think that Nintendo has a lot more going for it for young children and adults even, and also like families coming together to play together. And at least that's how they marketed it. It just seems almost like this is one of those more behaviors that you would kind of expect more from PlayStation and expect more from Xbox, but not necessarily from Nintendo. But I suppose, corporations at the end of the day, they all kind of just full loop around to the same spot. So maybe that's what it is, but I do find it a little odd, if I'm being honest. And I was listening to BeatEmUps talk about this the other day, and I fully agree. When you're standing in line, the console of the Nintendo Switch on opening night was already pretty pricey. In America, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia, in Japan, everywhere around the world that the console was being marketed to on mass levels, like European Union countries and such, those were already a high cost. And I did talk about this in my first video and I also think I kind of talked about this when the Switch was being released and I was looking at the price. I'm like, oh, that price. Because a lot of consoles are manufactured in a Nintendo of America. Everything gets shipped out through a USD price range. And then, depending on your dollar, you end up meeting that price range based on the original cost. And if you're Canadian like me, the console did not cost $450. It cost $700 to $720, maybe even $800, depending on how much you paid, which is a lot of money. And it was like that also in the European Union, from what I understand. And it was also like that in Australia, New Zealand. There is a complicated problem there, because I understand that inflation's a real big deal, and sometimes you kind of just have to eat the cost. But as a consumer, especially with the way the world is going, it seems the word recession is bouncing around. You kind of want to make smart decisions. So when you're standing in line, and let's just say you're like me and you decided to be insane and try to make it work anyway, you're standing in line and you see that the game is actually a game key card and not an actual physical copy. At that point, it's like, why am I paying all this extra money, the $15 extra that's passed to the consumer, when I can just get a digital download of the exact same game? And this kind of conversation came up apparently with Nintendo meeting with some of its sponsors. And one of the sponsors allegedly brought up that they were like third-party companies that make these indie games and stuff like that have never seen such lower numbers for these games that they're marketing to people. And these companies, it's like, if you will, remember when Avengers was in the theaters, Avengers Endgame, and it was like the box office weekend was generally the largest amount of money that you would expect when you're releasing a film. It's kind of the same thing with video games. On launch night, launch weekend, you expect a large return on your investment in Nintendo. And so far, it seems like the only company that's really seeing that is Cyberpunk, which is a physical copy game. It's not a game key card. Again, if you're not sure what a game key card is, it's basically like you get the case and you get a little cartridge, but the cartridge doesn't actually have any form of the game on it. Instead, what you do is you put the cartridge into your console, and that makes it technically accessible from the game store to be purchased and put on your console. So basically it's like buying a gift card, but it's like a physical copy of a Switch game cartridge. It's very odd. So at that point, why wouldn't you just buy why don't you just buy a gift card and spend less money on the e-store? But apparently, because of these game key cards, it doesn't matter. These companies are kind of eating the brunt of the investment that they put into Nintendo for the launch weekend, and they're not doing well, supposedly, which is unfortunate, because when you release a game with a brand new console in hopes, you expect a large return on that investment, which they're not seeing. So it's kind of unfortunate for these companies. And honestly, I'm kind of the person where if I'm buying a game, I either buy physical copy or that's it. I may buy a digital if I'm like, that's only the option, like the Mario Kart game. But like, I wouldn't buy a game key card. That just seems silly. Like, I'd rather just either not care that I own the game and it could just be removed from the Nintendo store, because that's what's going to happen eventually, or own the game because I really love that game and I never want to have the option taken away from me where that game no longer works for me. I wouldn't do a game key card. That just, I don't know. At that point, just buy a gift card, right? Like, but I don't think it's just, I'm sure there's other reasons why these games aren't doing as well. I think it's also just the cost of the Switch. A lot of people can't afford more than what there is. I was talking to someone the other day on stream, and they said that they had bought the Donkey Kong Bonanza pre-order. And I said, I'm going to be honest, I'm probably not going to buy a game for this console for a very long time, because the console costs so much money. And I already have a ton of games to play with anyway, and I bought this console for the Zelda games I already own, but in 4K. And I think a lot of people are probably going to feel that way. Like, I would really like to buy Civ 7 for the Switch too. And I would also really like to buy the Donkey Kong game. But I can't, because I just purchased the Switch, and that's my investment for a very long time. fact, the only game I will probably buy this year is going to be the Age of Imprisonment game. I would like to buy more games, but it depends on what's feasible for the budget. So right now it's not, especially since I'm going to a con in August. Like, things in general are getting more expensive. Sure, I was able to buy that, but that was because I put a half of a deposit down on the Switch 2 months prior. So I was able to save some money. I feel weird that games are now about saving. Like I understand that, you know, when we were kids, it was kind of like that, but I'm an adult with a full-time job and I have to save for a game on a console. I don't know. Like, I don't know if that seems silly. I'm sure someone in the comments is gonna be like, well, yeah, that's how it is. But like, most people are kind of in that spot too. Or maybe not most people, but let's see. Like, there's a difference between hardcore gamers who doesn't care, and then that's where all their budget goes to. But I would say I'm more of like a casual gamer. Or more of the average gamer, where I'll play a game like every night, sure, or maybe I won't play a game every night. But I do enjoy playing games sometimes. I think for the most average people, depending on the job market and your overall cost of living right now, is it feasible to be buying a game from Nintendo every month, especially if you live in Canada and each paycheck maybe pays you out less, your home costs are more, you need to make sure you feed your family, and then on top of that, all of a sudden these video games are now $120 out of your own currency, unlike the United States where they maybe be able to get away with $90. Again, $90 for a game is no laughing matter, and then you add like $30 on top of that, making it $120. It's just, especially if your dollar isn't that good in the first place, which means the overall inflation is harder if you live in those countries, like Canada. So it's just a complicated mess. And then I guess the last thing I kind of want to talk about, which I find really weird. I was talking to someone in Japan the other day, and not that I was in Japan talking to them. I was talking to someone from Japan, sorry. And they said to me that they had been trying to get a Nintendo Switch, but it's nearly impossible. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, in North America, apparently they purchased more Switches to make sure that when they sold out on the first weekend, they'd still have more than enough after the weekend. And the person said to me, they're like, yeah, Nintendo actually didn't make enough Switches in Japan, so it's actually almost impossible to get a Switch. And then I saw another person from Japan post somewhere saying, man, I lost out on the Nintendo lottery, because in Japan they do lottery systems with like concerts and stuff like that. It's kind of like, oh, you don't ever actually purchase anything, you put your name in and then maybe you win the lottery. So it seems that a lot of people in Japan, where Nintendo is from, can't find a console, but for somehow we have like an overabundance here in North America, because they know that North America is like one of their biggest marketing opportunities, which I thought that was very odd and also made me feel slightly weird, but like, what can I do about it as a consumer? But I don't know, I thought I would bring that up anyway. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of that, I know that I talked a lot about the kind of controversial things in this video, but overall I'm pretty happy with my Switch. I'm enjoying playing with it. At the end of the day, it is just a console, so I am just playing games on it. But I do want to recognize, you know, it is a privilege to own one of these. Even though I don't have that much money, I somehow made it work. And that alone is a privilege. I hate the fact that we have to address privileges all the time now, but like, also though, like, that is a privilege to say that. I don't know. It all comes down to, unfortunately, the consumer often gets blamed for what the company does. And at the end of the day, I think Nintendo is doing some interesting things that makes the consumer pin against the consumer, if you know what I mean. So I guess I will leave this last thought to you, and also to myself. I think if you're a hardcore gamer, it would make sense that you would want to buy the Switch, and it would be a very important priority to you. For me, I saw buying the Switch 2 as a business deal so that I could make videos like this and get my name out there, and also play games on the Switch 2, which gives people more opportunity to see my videos. So I found it more of a business opportunity. But if you're just a regular player, honestly, you'd probably be fine just keeping with your Switch and waiting a few months if you want to buy the Switch too, because I mean, I don't think the price will lower either way, but at least you'll have more time for it. Don't let FOMO run your life. If you don't want to buy a Switch 2, or you're wanting to buy a Switch 2 but only because of pressure, then just don't buy a Switch 2. You can wait. It's okay. But also though, like, your decision at the end of the day, like, no matter what you do, no matter what I say, you're still going to make your own decision. And even if you are having FOMO and you buy a console, don't feel bad that you had FOMO and you bought a console. Now you have a console. It's such a weird discussion, but like, I feel like I had to say that anyway, because I feel like maybe some people misunderstood the 1 week after video. I think I've covered everything I've wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am doing a playthrough again of my Skyward Sword playthrough. It's up here on the Finders tab. I don't even know what that thing is called, but you can find the playlist there. I'm probably gonna be done by the time this video comes out, if I'm being honest. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, my name is Sarah. I am the host of Sarah's Spare Corner. Sarah's Spare Corner encompasses gaming, as well as arts, crafts, and various different forms of creativity. Additionally, I like sharing theories, concepts, and ideas, as I am a philosophy major. And when I am not poor, I might travel places, and I might post. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next. Bye now.